Okay, first, welcome back after the lunch break. Hope you all enjoyed it. The workshop starts again right now, but here on the main stage, it's a great pleasure for me to welcome Fletcher, founder of the Hipstery, and maybe some of you already know him from his columns on Venture Village in one of our magazines. The topic for his keynote will be bad startup advice and cliches, the top 10. So yeah, I guess you're all looking forward to it. Thanks. Adam?
Can you hear me okay? All good? So that's me, or me in 10 years. I'm a columnist at Venture Village in Gründerzone. I own something called the Hipstery, which is an e-commerce store in which I make and attempt to sell a whole variety of largely unsuccessful products. And lastly, for money, I mostly write books these days. So I have about 4 in the next year, including one about lifestyle businesses, which is probably directly relevant to you guys. If you have an interesting story to tell about lifestyle businesses, then please come and find me. So if my name is in any way familiar, you may have read my How to Be German series. About 1 million people read this. It was a Venture Village article to begin with. It will also be a book, which looks a bit like this, and is coming out sometime in July. But today, I'm going to talk to you about bad advice and cliches. This maybe sounds like a kind of innocent topic, but I actually think that it's quite sinister, because a lot of people are giving out advice, and some of that advice is good and some of that advice is bad, but often there's so much you can't really tell the difference between the two. And it means that people behave often in incorrect ways because they're following a stereotype or a cliche that they've read about, and they think that's what's going to make them successful. And in the end, all it does is put a lot of pressure on them to behave a certain way, and that way is often incorrect. And I think that we're very keen always to give advice, and we forget that advice is kind of like a tailored suit. Yeah, it fits us perfectly. When we give it out to other people and they try it on, somehow they don't look quite as good in it. And that's because the advice that we're giving is from our unique circumstance. And so I've collected, I don't know if they're really the worst 10, it's just kind of like 10 that annoy me in particular. And so the first one is that Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, whoever did this certain thing, and so you should do it as well. What this thing is often, actually largely irrelevant what that thing is, and it's often completely contradictory. It depends on the article that you read, the thing that you're supposed to do. And what annoys me about advice like this is that it's too steeped in confirmation bias. Yeah? And so we kind of evaluate an already successful person in hindsight, and we prescribe talent or luck or judgment to decisions that were oftentimes just lucky guesses. So I found an article on VentureBeat about what makes a good entrepreneur, and this was full of this kind of bad advice. And so the first quote I have for you is about Mark Cuban, and it said that Mark Cuban didn't take a day off for 7 years when he launched his first venture, Micro Solutions. That's the end of the quote. I think we're supposed to read this and we're supposed to go like, oh, wow, look at Mark Cuban, yeah? I should be like him, I should work that hard, I shouldn't take a day off for 7 years. And that is really terrible advice. I would hope that Mark followed that sentence with another sentence that said, you know what, I really regret that. You know, if I'd built my business right from the beginning, it probably wouldn't have needed me there for 2,555 days in a row. And actually, I had a lot of personal relationships at that time which suffered because of the amount of work that I did. And I probably didn't need to put that kind of pressure on myself in the end. From the same article, here's a quote about Steve Jobs. I could do a whole presentation about bad advice from Steve Jobs, yeah? Or at least like bad hero worship that surrounds Steve Jobs, even if the advice is not from him directly. So in this one, we're told that from the time Steve was a child, you know, when other children were drawing, you know, stick men of mum and dad in front of a yellow smiling sun, Steve Jobs was there building products he felt could be revolutionary, you know, as a child. That's possible, but I don't think it's highly probable. Yeah? And if you weren't doing that when you were a child, if you were falling over and cutting your knee, that's totally fine. It doesn't mean that you couldn't be the next Steve Jobs. So, passion, desire, hunger, and commitment. Yeah. If it's okay with you guys, I would say we just retire all of these words, or we agree that we'll only use the word passion if it's directly followed by the word fruit. I think the problem that I have with these words is that we couple success too much to effort. And there are many reasons why you're likely to succeed as a business person, and it's not always about the effort that you put in. So passion is kind of a prerequisite. It's why you sit in this room with me today, yeah? And it's unlikely to be the reason why your business succeeds or fails. Passion is why you're at the race. It's not why you're going to win the race. And so, yeah, passion's kind of implied. And so, next slide. Yeah, number 3, fake it till you make it. Yeah, this is also known as lying. This is an act that's usually reserved for CVs, children, and sociopaths. I think the whole scene only works if we're all really honest with each other, yeah? About the problem I have is that otherwise it starts to look like everybody is successful. And so if I stand here and tell you that the Hipstery, my e-commerce store, is largely unsuccessful. I have very few products that ever return the money that I invest in them. Like, that's more honest than standing here and pretending that I'm a successful businessman, because I'm not. I'm a terrible businessman. And so we owe it to ourselves to be really honest about our successes and our failures. Otherwise, from our press releases, from our business cards, from our LinkedIn profiles, from our website copy, it starts looking like everybody is really successful. And the danger of that is that it scares people to try things because they're afraid of failing, because failure must be very personal. It's something that's on them. They didn't succeed. Everybody else is a success. And so why? That leads founders into depressions, into burnouts. Even a few examples in the media of founder suicides. We're putting too much pressure on ourselves. Okay. The secret of my success, this is a very English thing. This is when you get a successful person and you sit them down and you say, successful person, what is the secret of your success? As if success could be summarized down into a 2 or 3 word like morning meditation session, that you can put at the end of the sentence, the secret of my success is. And I think that if I had to be really honest about my meager success, it would be that I was born into the life of a middle-class, university-educated white guy in the 5th richest country in the world. That's the secret of my success. Yeah, and I think that I think that the kind of accidents of birth like that, like there's nothing in Lance Armstrong's medicine cabinet that can give you a kind of head start like that. Okay, social. Yeah, okay, if you want to put this in advice form, it would be social, huh? Douglas Adams had a fairly famous quote about interactivity. He said, we need a word for interactivity, like we need a special word for a human with only one head. I think it's the same with social. We're humans, almost everything we do is social. You don't need a special word for that. And so social is not a differentiator. Yeah? It's not like pepperoni that you put on top of your pizza and makes you somehow special. Okay. Startup Ninja. Yeah, I get why we use these titles, yeah, because they're fun, but I'm not sure we always take like the best with the ninja, the punk, or the rock star. So I think if your job involves spreadsheets, email, or getting up any time before noon, rock stars hate you, and they would really politely request that you don't use the word rock star in your job ads anymore. Okay, the Startup Ninja. I'm pretty sure it was the Startup Ninja who created the term stealth mode. But I would guess that they're a little bit too busy being lethal deadly assassins in order to come to the morning brainstorming session or play table tennis with you in the chill out room. The business punk. Actually, this is the one that I find the most nonsensical. It's as if you've got a group of punks sitting together and one says to the other one, what's the most anti-establishment that we could be? And the other punk, he thinks about it and he says, I guess we could join the establishment. Yeah, and so the business punk was born. Turn your passion into a business. Yeah, this is terrible advice. So my passion, for example, is laying around in my house in my underwear and eating chocolate. It's great as a passion. Unless you make couches or you make chocolate, I think it wouldn't be a very good business. Yeah, but because I do that, I get fat, and so I need to go to the gym. And so there you have a problem as opposed to a passion. And so I think that passions are often not profitable, but problems are always profitable. Okay, if we build it, they will come. This is true on several levels. If you're building a brothel, otherwise I would say it's not going to happen. Yeah? It would be great if life was like a correctly aligned machine in which we would pour in hard work and talent, and out would drop like the same amount of success. It would be great if life was like that, but sadly it's not. Life is ambivalent to us. Yeah? And so if you build it, they won't come. That's the bad news. But you can fix that. You can fix that with marketing. Marketing is how you realign that misaligned machine to get yourself the attention that you need. And from that attention, you can turn into users, from users to paying users, from paying users to profit. That all comes from marketing. And so I think for every hour and every euro that you invest in building your startup, you have to put the same into the marketing of it. Otherwise, you can't correctly evaluate if it worked or if it didn't work. 9 minutes. OK. Oh, yeah. If we build it, they will come. The most important thing is X. Yeah, that's kind of a summary as opposed to a specific point. Like what I'm trying to do with this talk is to encourage us to be always skeptical of anyone who says, I know anything with any certainty. Because life's kind of a bit too fuzzy for that, and we're all viewing things from our own unique positions of bias. And so, This is Adam's fundamental law of advice, which might be a real law. I didn't actually really check. And that's for every single piece of advice, there will be another that directly contradicts it. Which sounds very depressing or negative or nihilistic, but actually it's really fine because a startup is a reaction already to that. I think a startup is a reaction to ambiguity. And if I had to define it in a sentence, I would call it a vehicle for the systematic testing of a business hunch. Yeah? And so the best startups are those that are the most analytical in testing their hunches. My microphone is falling off my head. And so how much would people be willing to pay for this? Should we raise prices? Should we introduce Google Ads? Should we introduce an affiliate scheme? Should we change the website copy, make 2 or 3 new versions? It's always this kind of hunch, test, iterate, test, hunch, iterate in whatever order. And the best startups are the most analytical. Okay, because it's not that everything matters, and it's not that nothing matters. It's just that everything matters until you know categorically that it doesn't matter. And lastly, we've got pivot. Oh, let me move back. Pivot. Yeah, this is definitely a trend in Berlin that I'm seeing. I call it the premature pivot. This is where you work for, I don't know, for half a year, building something, you got your launch rock page up, and then you finally go online, you know, and you like cold email 5 journalists, and you write TechCrunch, and you send a newsletter to your mum, and you get like a Facebook fan page, and you get a few dozen users, and you experiment with them for a few months, and then you go, okay, it's not working, we have insignificant traction, it's time to pivot. Yeah, and that could be true. It's not that pivoting in any way is wrong, it's just that unless you've invested the time and the money and the resources in the marketing of your service, it's very often that you don't know if it's the right time to pivot or not. Okay, and now we're going to pivot because that is the end of my talk, and we're going to move to some Q&As. Is everybody here for my Q&As? Okay, then we do Andreas first. I'll start with advice, what really works. Yeah, so I'd like to welcome to the stage Andreas Etten, please, for the first Q&A. Now, Andreas, I'll do a quick intro for you. Andreas is a serial entrepreneur and investor, and he founded his first internet company, which was called Market Makers in 1995. Yeah? Should we do it standing, or would you like to sit?
We should take a seat. Thank you.
And so what I find interesting about you, Andreas, is because you've been kind of in the game for so long, you have a much broader view than the rest of us. And so while technologies have changed and I guess niches have changed, like what stayed the same over that long period from 1995 until now? Like what's still important?
Well, I think many things have changed, but I mean, there are no surprises. Many things have not changed at all either. So I think, first of all, the team is very important. You should have a good complementary team. You should know the market you are entering, know your target customers. So that hasn't changed, definitely. And I would also say you need luck and a good timing.
It feels like a lot of people would be against the idea of saying you need luck.
Well, I mean, to be honest, I have had failures myself, and I have had successes. And I think everyone has.
Can you rationalize the ones that worked and the ones that didn't work and come up with a reason why, or is it really sometimes just about luck?
Well, I think if you have a good idea, if you have a good team and you're doing great work, you can still fail because the wrong timing, there's a competitor being faster than you, whatever, and I think luck is an essential part of success. And that's also why I think no one should not try a second or third time if he or she failed the first or second time, because luck can come back, and then you may have luck and success.
And did you succeed the first time?
The first time I did succeed, yes.
Okay.
It was before 95. Yeah. I was lucky. The second time was not a big success.
Okay. And what about, give me some examples of advice that you think other people follow, and in your experience it's just wrong.
Should I give the antithesis? You mentioned. What I think I hear sometimes people say, okay, I want to be in, I want to be quickly making a lot of money. And I think every true success has had a long period, a long ramp up. So if you start your own business, you should be in for the long run and really be prepared for 5, 6, 7 years. So especially in Berlin, I feel sometimes people really want to start something just to get rich and to do it quickly. Yeah. And you have some success stories which become very big, very successful, have exits after 2 or 3 years, but it is very unusual. And I think usually it takes a few years, proper work, and then out of a sudden, you are there, out of a sudden there's a success, and most people forget the years before.
Yeah, it's amazing how that it seems to happen in an instant, yeah, and the people involved have actually been plugging away for many years. Do you think it's a difference of mindset then, and that certain people, they just want to get to an exit, whereas other people want to build really a profitable, sustainable business?
Well, I personally believe if you start a business with the exit in mind, it's bound to fail. Yeah. Usually, you start to build something that's your baby, you have a vision, you want to become, or make this vision reality, and then you start working and you will have failures, it won't work out as you plan to do, as you planned it in the beginning, and then you have to reinvent yourself, and it takes a pretty long time. But then in the end, it turns out to be your baby and a success. It won't be a quick thing.
And from the outside, it might look like you have quite disparate interests. So you're part of B2 and C-Date and these kind of dating websites, but you invest in completely different stuff. So you invest in an app for wine recommendations was one. And like what are the commonalities between the different types of businesses in your portfolio?
Well, this may be also an interesting point relating to the questions we had before. When we started B2, a matchmaking company, the market was already filled, so we had to find another way, and we internationalized very quickly. So in 2004, 2005, we went to several countries, and after 6 months, we were in 5 countries. But we did this because we didn't find a way to compete in Germany. So that was the beginning of one of the dimensions we are always interested in, internationalizing quickly. We work in 35, 40 countries nowadays. The second thing related to this is that we focus on digital, because you can scale and internationalize much more easily. Yeah. Thirdly, it is consumer-facing, and subscription is something we really understand.
A lot of people are saying that there was a kind of subscription hype, yeah, and that this idea that the customers are going to have 5 or 6 monthly subscriptions is actually not realistic, and kind of monthly subscription is kind of over now. Do you think there's still a lot of promise in that as a business model?
Well, I don't think it's over. Actually, first of all, it's a very nice business model, obviously.
Because you have the recurring.
But I mean, you see these e-commerce business models that try to implant subscription on e-commerce, like you get a box every month or a product every so often. So I don't think subscription is over.
Okay.
I don't hope so, at least.
I guess in dating, it's maybe a little bit different. You have a specific problem that you're trying to solve.
Yeah, but you have other subscription businesses, especially also in the B2B area. If you look at software as a service, which is sold as a subscription model very, very often, and that is very successful indeed.
Okay. And for people in the audience who are thinking about taking funding for their startup, as an investor, what are you looking for from them?
Well, I don't think I have 2 partners. We do all the things together, and I don't think we would call ourselves investors, rather co-entrepreneurs. So we really select what we do. We have a limited group of companies we are engaged in, and we try to really help the entrepreneurs to avoid mistakes we have taken and ask them the mean questions, help them face the brutal facts if you want. So, of course, we concentrate on startups in our field where we can really give advice. So e-commerce, for instance, is not one of our core areas.
But what I'm interested in is, because you've got so many companies that you're involved in, like how much time can you really give to one specific company from your portfolio?
Each one of us has a selected number of companies, so I probably have 3, 4 where I spend more time. We have regular workshops. Sometimes we go for a project, we go into the company for 3 days a week for a certain period, then we withdraw again. So in fact, it is a limited number, maybe 4 or 5 you can handle at the same time.
Okay. And I guess it's strange to ask you this question as an investor or a co-founder, but do you think it's always the right decision to look for funding, or do you think in some cases it makes sense to go your own way and bootstrap?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think it depends very much on the business. If you have an e-commerce type of business, you need a lot of working capital, so you need money. If you are in a market where the winner takes it all, you're probably should take some money to build a leading position quickly and defend entry barriers for competitors. But I think more often than not, you can go a long way without money, shipping a least viable product into the market to the target customers and understand how they receive the product. And then I'm a big fan of reiterating, of getting the metrics, learning. And once you have cohorts, you have metrics, you have the KPIs, you can understand much better how much money you need. So you can go to the potential investors with a much clearer picture. And you may even find out that you don't need that much money or need no money at all and can build the business on your own. And this prevalent fear of a competitor arriving from somewhere, I don't think that is it's a reality. You should have much more confidence and go your own way.
It feels like in Berlin, kind of everybody's always in a big rush. Yeah. Like what's your view on kind of speed versus execution?
It's a little bit squaring the circle, if you want. I think speed is very important, and I don't think it needs to be on the expense of quality. It is rather doing less, doing the things once and doing them right, and then you will become fast anyway. So I think you need both quality and speed. But the most important thing is to get the product out and get feedback from the market to be able to learn. So I don't think it is a conflict. You have to focus and do the right things and do them once.
So is it a question of deciding clearly what you focus on, of really defining what you want?
Exactly, to do less, so exactly prioritize. But those things you do, you should do them well, because otherwise you have to redo them all the time, and that is really time consuming.
Okay.
And then you become quick anyway.
Yeah. Okay, and actually, how much time do we have left, guys? The time on here is not... How much time do we have left? Can we get a question from the audience, or are we running out? Like on here, it just says half an hour. So, yeah? Okay, so does anyone have a question for Andreas from the audience? Okay, great. Then tell me about some good advice. Then tell me about.
You said I shouldn't give advice because it's anti-thesis anyway.
I know, but we burned through my questions rather quickly, and so now I'm trying to think about what's the most useful for the people in the audience. Like, how can we most use your experience?
No, I think if a founder or a young person has an idea, he or she should go for it, and then not let deviate oneself from other advices and from other ideas. So if you have an idea, you should go for it, learn, but really try to make it reality, and be in for the long run. So I think that's what I believe is a good way to build your own business.
You think it's a much longer journey than people appreciate when they start?
Yeah, I mean, you should start small, learn, and then build it patiently, diligently, and with a lot of commitment and engagement. And I'm personally not a big fan of this idea, okay, let's build it quickly, let's make it international within 2 years, 20 countries.
Then you did that yourself with
yes,
B2 and C-Date.
But we did it in a very cautious way, and we built the company with our own money, with our own cash flow for the first 4 years, which nowadays is something relatively rare. But that leads in turn to a situation where we still own our company, at least the very vast majority of the shares. And if I see many startups where the founders, after 2 years, after 2 or 3 rounds of financing, they own maybe 20, 30%. And that makes me a little bit sad, because it's their baby, their effort, and they still own a relatively small share of it. It may be necessary if the business requires such funding, but I think more often than not, as I said before, you can probably go a much longer way without diluting. And I personally think it's very nice if you have your own baby and can keep on going and doing the things you want. And if someday someone really puts a lot of money on the table, you can still think of selling. But it is a question if you really want to do this, because then the day after, you may find yourself in a situation where you don't really know what to do.
And there's a lot of focus, I think, in the German startup scene, probably because of what the Semmer brothers are doing, and that's the focus on e-commerce. That's definitely not an area that you've really focused on, huh?
We're focusing on digital goods, so e-commerce is not our area.
And why don't you focus on e-commerce? Why is that not interesting?
Well, because we have an infrastructure where we can leverage, or which we can leverage and bring businesses or make them very international very quickly, because we have the infrastructure. But if you ship goods, you're limited to, let's say, at least the European Union, whereas we operate on all 6 continents, and for that you need a digital product, otherwise you cannot do it.
Okay. Okay, well, I thank you for your time.
Adam,
please, a round of applause for Andreas, and we're going to welcome next to the stage Fabian Heilemann.
Okay. Adam, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Fabian, hi, welcome. Thanks for taking the time.
Thanks.
So, Fabian, I guess most of you guys know, but I'll do a brief intro for you, Fabian, anyway, just because I've researched it. So, Fabian, along with his brother Ferry, were the original founders of DailyDeal back in 2009, which was sold to Google in 2011.
Correct.
Since then, not only have you bought it back from Google, you've also kind of diversified your portfolio and created Heilemann Ventures, in which you've done some smaller early rounds, investment rounds, and also recently you announced Heilemann & Co., which is a digital agency. Okay, so questions. Keeping on the topic of advice, since it's what we've been talking about. Looking back now, what do you think was some of the more harmful advice you received from the early days, where you go, actually, that didn't make any sense. I don't know why I listened to that.
Well, actually, I cannot recall much of harmful advice that I've gotten during the early days or over the last years in total. We've actually never really made bad decisions based on bad advice that we had received. It was actually more the fact that the advice that we got mostly was really good, and those decisions which proved not to work out for us were more the ones where we did not seek advice on.
Okay. Do you have some examples of those?
Well, looking backwards, I think the most important, say, decision clusters you want to think of is make or buy. Make yourself aware of what's the strategically important functions for your success, for the success of the particular business model of your company, and make sure that all the core things are actually not bought from an agency, for example, or freelancers, but are actually being made by your company. Yeah. So make or buy decisions is one of the important clusters. Another cluster I cannot overemphasize is your hiring strategy and hiring policies. We were way too fast in our decisions oftentimes because the industry was evolving very rapidly. Yeah. And oftentimes we were making decisions not only based on the paper form, but like 80% on the paper form. Okay, it seems to be fitting. Okay, the interview was okay, let's hire him. And oftentimes we've had so much regrets on that, and then
hiring too quickly, or
hiring too quickly, and being not diligent enough about not only the qualifications on the paper form, but about the actual cultural fit to your business, but also to your company culture. And I think many entrepreneurs are underestimating the efforts it takes to get rid of people again, or to replace people that you hired that did not fit. Because first of all, it takes time, usually months, to figure out it doesn't fit. It takes another few months and costs money to revoke that decision. And then you need to spend money and time to hire somebody new for the same position. So yeah, make or buy, hiring, and then generally, business ethics and trust is something we learned to pay much more attention to. you know, in our industry, as I said, it was all going very, very fast. It was kind of grow or die, and oftentimes we entered into relationships and contracts and business relations with people where we did not have a really good gut feeling about it. And in 95% of those cases, sooner or later, it always turned back on us. So today we just don't do business with people whom we don't trust.
But today, I guess you have the luxury of a lot more time.
True.
Yeah. And so let's talk a little bit about Heilemann & Co. then, this digital agency. Because a lot of people might say that seems like a strange choice and you have all the expertise. Why wouldn't you use that to build your own companies as opposed to kind of selling that expertise as a service?
So first of all, we are actually using Heilemann & Company and the expertise that is accumulated there. We're using that also to support our portfolio companies at Heilemann Ventures, which is currently 12 companies in our portfolio. So it's basically a combination. We're using it to support our portfolio. We're using it to some extent also to still support DailyDeal, and we're realizing projects for third parties out in the market. And the decision while we opened up Heilemann Company was basically, you have to see it from a broader perspective. So DailyDeal, or the deal industry currently, is not growing anymore. It's more or less moving sideways. Some channels are going down, some are going sideways. And our most important mission for DailyDeal for the next 2, 3, 4 quarters is making it break even, sustainably break even. It's not about growth or market share, it's about making it break even, finally, ultimately. And opening up the agency is basically, does not only serve these purposes that I just mentioned, but it also helps us cut some costs in the DailyDeal business, because of those functions. It's essentially 5 business units that the agency has. Those functions are all functions where we have accumulated a lot of knowledge and expertise and reputation within DailyDeal, but we don't really need these functions to the extent we've had them within DailyDeal anymore. So basically this is opening up Heilemann Company was a way that allows us to retain the talent that we've built within DailyDeal, and what we've always had inbound requests from people over the past few years saying, hey, can you build us a data warehouse? Yeah. Can you help us with CRM software, email marketing, etc.? We always said, no, it's not our business model. We're selling deals. We're not a consultancy. Okay. But so we were basically responding to this demand that was already there, retaining these people in our ecosystem and universe, making their expertise available to our portfolio companies, still having them around in case DailyDeal needs them, and being able to service third parties in the market, and through this basically refinancing the salaries. That is the triangle in which you have to see that contextualized.
It makes a lot of sense. Okay, and did you find that like people are coming to you again and again with the same sorts of problems at Heilemann & Co.?
Well, it would be a bit exaggerated to say that, because the company, the Heilemann Company, is only 2.5 months old. Okay. It was. I mean, we realized that right after we bought DailyDeal back from Google as part of the bigger plan behind that transaction. I mean, buying back DailyDeal. So far, we're seeing good interest, and we've already executed a few smaller projects. We're right now pitching for a couple of larger projects. So we're satisfied with the with how things are going at Heilemann Company, but it would be too early to say it's always the same things people are coming back.
I wondered in the process of setting it up was kind of a reaction to the fact that people keep coming and saying, hey Fabian, can you help me with this? We're struggling with this.
That's true. Yeah. No, yeah, a reaction to people asking us for advice in terms of can you consult, can you implement, etc. But also a reaction to headhunters approaching these people again and again and again. So we thought, okay, there must be a certain value in that. And then why should we let those people go? Why don't we just make them available for third parties who are obviously willing to pay for this knowledge and know-how that they have, but still in our ecosystem.
Yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense. there were probably a lot of people were kind of surprised or possibly even critical about you buying back DailyDeal from Google. Under what circumstances do you think that it makes sense for a founder to go back? Because a lot of people would say, the energy's gone, you've had the big exit, you're not that young, nimble startup that you were anymore, it's never the same the second time round.
Yeah. Well, so first of all, true. I mean, the moment we bought the company back, it was a subsidiary of a multinational digital corporate.
Google machine, yeah.
Right. So indeed, it wasn't much of a startup culture anymore. However, we have to, and we are bringing this startup culture back to DailyDeal right now. We have to do it, otherwise we will not be able to reach the goals that we have, that I mentioned earlier. And so we're currently doing all to re-implement startup culture in the business. And we're succeeding quite well so far. Things are going more flexible, more agile. People also work longer hours, are more enthusiastic about it. The team starts building up again. People start partying together again.
Okay.
So yeah, the second part of the question: does it make sense, or under which circumstances does it make sense to buy the company back? I mean, we didn't really plan for that for a long time. It was, and I hope you understand, I can't really talk about the details, but I can tell you that this opportunity opened up in early 2013, and we were thinking about it, say, for about 2 months. And for us, I mean, if you compare, you always have to think in comparing scenarios. Yeah. If we would have left the company, and we were still involved in the management of the company, we would have just left. We would, I mean, there's non-competes, etc. We could have never ever done anything in this space again, with which we were familiar. Well, we do have a standing and are known to the customers, etc. So we would have to either pursue the investment business full-time as angels or raise a fund, or go into completely new areas of business.
So for you, the decision to go back is a rational economic decision, and it's not based on the, I don't know, any kind of bias that it was your company, to begin with, or.
It was different criteria paying in on this decision. Of course, we would not have done it if it wouldn't have made sense to us financially, economically, if the downsides were larger than the upside potentials, etc., like an investment case. That's for sure. Other than that, as I said, the strategic implications on basically, continuing to do business in or close to the industry that we know best is a kind of a strategic implication that was playing a role here. A third factor, of course, was, and I cannot give details on that, but of course, are we also interested in preserving the entrepreneurial heritage that we build here, and in preserving the relationships with many of the individuals that came to work for us, and creating an environment where we're able to keep working with these people, either at DailyDeal or at Heilemann Company or at Heilemann Ventures or in any of our portfolio companies. So this is another strategic aspect of taking this asset DailyDeal back and then being able, as a 100% subsidiary without any investors in it, being able to kind of use the assets that are in there in the best way for this kind of triangle ecosystem. So there's a couple of criteria that all paid in on this decision, and it was not an emotional decision in that sense that we would say, no matter what it costs, no matter how in what bad shape the deal industry is, we have to buy this company back. Otherwise, we would be bad entrepreneurs.
Yeah, but there's obviously an emotional element that's always involved in decision making. It's nice to think that we're all, totally rational human beings.
Yeah, a certain aspect, but this was not the one that was driving this decision. We've been going through the business cases and Excels for weeks, days and nights, and figured out under which conditions and circumstances we could do it, and kind of the bargaining zones overlapped with Google, and then we got to an agreement. It wasn't, we wouldn't have done it if that would have been the case.
Okay, now we have only 10 seconds left. So do you have a final thought that you can put into 7 seconds?
A final
thought? Final summary?
Well, be true to yourself. Pick a business model that suits your talents. Look in the mirror. Carefully select the people you work with based on whether you think they're good and you can trust them. Work in very short and fast iterations. Work hard.
And be rational.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's about it.
Oh, we have one question. Do we have time?
Yeah, sure.
It's good? Yeah.
Fabian, can you please tell us a little bit more about your exit strategy? Did you have one in the beginning? And were you looking for Google and potential buyers, or Google actually found you?
Unfortunately, this is also subject to NDAs, but essentially in early 2011, almost every major digital player was in some way looking at the deal industry because it just grew so quickly that everybody, be it Google, eBay, Amazon, Facebook, everybody was kind of looking at it and was mingling with all relevant players in all relevant destinations. But generally speaking, from a certain scale to which you get with your company or your transaction volume gets, say in the low to mid 8-digit range, you definitely want to think about mandating an M&A, a corporate finance firm, not try doing it on your own.
Any other questions from the audience? I think we have to quickly wrap up now anyway. Okay, good. Then Fabian, thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.